Alrighty, hello and welcome to week 4 of Cycle, Synch, and Chisel. This is a very sciencey based discussion this week. Again, I think it is like we are a society that is oftentimes misled, but also just a basis of misinformation and lack of education, specifically if we are speaking about women's reproductive systems. There's, oh my God, so much going on right now. And I think the lack of education is something that needs to swiftly change. And I don't need us to be complete brainiacs about this, but I do think that if you are looking to regulate your endocrine system, so your hormonal system, you have to have a basic understanding of what is happening and what each part of your body, which organ, which gland does what it does, and what hormones play into that. Okay, so we are going to get sciencey. We'll kind of try to keep it as surface layer as possible. And yeah, let's dive in. Let's just go for it. Let's dive in. Okay, so I need this thing at the top of my screen to come away, but I guess it's not going to. We'll work with it. Okay, so understanding your endocrine system. These are our objectives for today. It's a very long list. We're going to go through what is your endocrine system. How does that relate to your woman code? So if we recall, the woman code is like the way to live in unison with your hormones. If we're not living in unison with our hormones, we will fall into most likely a bunch of different issues, right? So our body has a unique code, our woman code, and we've been taught to live basically under a man's code. And so we are learning week by week how to live under the woman code. So how does the endocrine system relate to our woman code? We're going to do a quick review of what the 5 underlying hormonal problems that women face, what those are. We're going to just quickly also talk about a review of our flow blockers. So those are reasons why we usually end up in hormonal disruption. We're going to identify the 3 simple ways. I don't mean to say that in a condescending nature, but it's simple. 3 simple ways that we can regulate our endocrine system, that we can live in unison with our endocrine system. We make things so complicated. We really do. Life is complicated. Let's be fair. Life is very complicated. We make this very complicated. It doesn't actually have to be. But we'll discuss that 3 ways that we can work in unison with our endocrine system. We will talk about, very briefly, identify all of our lady parts, right? So from our sex organs to our endocrine organs, they're all basically like of the same system. So we'll just quickly identify those. And then this is where it gets super sciencey. We'll just go in through from the top to the bottom of your endocrine system. We'll name the glands and the organs involved, what they do, how they communicate with each other, and hopefully give you a good understanding of like, this is why this is happening to me, and this is how I could fix it. Okay, and that's kind of the piece there, the grouping of systems at the bottom. It's again, these endocrine systems. Oh, Penn just came to say hi. These endocrine systems are all very interrelated. They all literally communicate with each other to some degree. We'll talk about that too. Okay, endocrine system. What is it? Your endocrine system is made up of a system of organs and glands that send messages to one another via hormones, and that determines how the system functions. We know that we have multiple systems within our body. Every single one of those is dictated, is run, is controlled via your endocrine system. Literally every piece of your body is connected. When we talk about mind-body connection, this is it. I love mind-body connection when it comes to movement, and this is like a nitty-gritty, like deeper layer that I'm now swimming through, that I'm like, holy shit, like it all makes sense. Like it literally all makes sense. Talk about like the power of your breath. Your breath regulates your nervous system. If your nervous system is out of whack, guess what's out of whack? Your endocrine system, right? So it's literally all connected. All of these different parts of your body, all these organs and glands that make up your endocrine system, they're all working really closely together to make sure that all of your body is functioning the way that it should be. when we think of the relationship between your endocrine system and woman code, right? How you're maybe now thinking about living your life in accordance to your woman code. If we break down the word code, code is literally a system of signals used to send messages. That is your endocrine system, right? That is exactly what it is. When we are out of alignment with our endocrine system and therefore our woman code, different issues will arise. And this is due to misinformation, lack of education, and desensitization, right? We have been conditioned, we've grown up to think that these reoccurring issues that we experience are just a normal part of womanhood. So we become desensitized. We could even break this down into, this could happen to men too. You eat a meal, and every single time you eat this meal, like say it's, okay, I'll take myself, for example, I've used this before, ice cream. Every time I eat ice cream, I don't feel well. I've allowed myself to become, I'm choosing to become desensitized, knowing that I will not feel well after it and eating it anyways. But if I were to do that every single day, therein lies a more serious issue. Another representation of this would be us working very, very long days, stressful jobs, and not tuning into the signs that our endocrine system is presenting to us, that we are overstressed, that we are overworked, that we need to chill. That is a desensitization, and our society applauds that, right? So that's something that we must unlearn. We must learn to listen to our body and then unlearn that desensitization is the way. We actually need to become more awake and more sensitized, more aware of the signaling that our body is presenting to us, which is happening all the time. And we're so good at ignoring it. Here's a very good example. So cold hands, chronic respiratory infections, and eczema. Those are all things that could be seen as isolated symptoms. And they're actually not. The cold hands would be a sign that your thyroid is underperforming. The chronic respiratory infections would be a sign that your adrenals are overworked. And the eczema would be a sign that your liver isn't detoxifying, right? Remember, when something presents on our skin, that is our organs of elimination. So we have our liver, large intestine, lymphatic system, and our skin. When liver, large intestine aren't doing their job, goes to the lymphatic system, still not maybe doing its job, it presents on our skin. And that's when we know, like, oh, we've got a pretty deeply rooted problem if it's already on the surface layer of our skin, right? So we've reviewed this, not to sound like a broken record, but we're going to say it one more time. The 5 underlying causes of hormonal problems in women are that your blood sugar is not being regulated. Okay. That is like usually number 1. Blood sugar is not being regulated. Adrenals are overworked. That could be stress. That could be literally overworking. That could be consuming too much caffeine. Very many reasons why our adrenals could be overworked. Our pathways of elimination have become clogged or blocked. Okay. We're operating life in ways that are not taking our cycle into consideration. So again, it's a rinse and repeat cycle. Every day we wake up and expect we can perform the same way. Every day we expect that we will be able to show up emotionally the same way, right? And also, kind of very closely in my mind related to that, is that we are, again, as a society, but women for sure, we're not very in tune to our feminine energy. We all, as a society, operate very heavily out of the masculine energy. As males and females, we all have both energies. And ideally, they're in balance, but really, truly, most of us are not, right? So these are things that can cause our hormonal issues, things to become out of balance. And the neat thing, truly, about the endocrine system is that when one part of that system is not functioning the way it should be, other parts will do whatever they can to pick up the slack. So when one part isn't working the way it should be, other parts definitely start to take a hit because they're trying to make up for this. So they can't fully do their like their job description, right? It's like you're on a job where like you got to start picking up the slack for someone else, and now you start slacking, right? That's exactly what happens in the endocrine system. Why do these problems arise, right? Why do we have blood sugar issues? Why are our adrenals out of whack? Why are we operating on the masculine more than the feminine? Remember our flow blockers? Those are like key reasons why these things happen. So it's misinformation and lack of education. It is cultural conditioning, and that stretches the gap of us being told that it's just normal how you feel, that your symptoms are normal, stop complaining, to your body is gross and disgusting, don't ever talk about your bleed, and also you are aging, so now you're gross. Like, these are cultural conditionings. Those are just small little examples, but there's many. Environmental, lifestyle, and stress factors, right? So we talked about that, the dirty dozen. Huge endocrine disruptors. We're trying to build awareness around that. We're trying to make more informed choices. In terms of lifestyle and stress, also just trying to maybe perhaps consider taking on less at some parts, sometimes during our cycle. And I realized last week, I never touched on modern diet. I like totally skipped it. I did redo the slides so that it was in there. But our society lives off of like a ton of processed foods and convenience. And that's wonderful. It helps us be super productive, right? We can keep working. We don't have to stop to make anything because we can just, grab whatever's already made. But a lot of times those foods they're not providing us with the micronutrients that we need, right? We have macros, carbs, fats, proteins, but they're not providing us with the micronutrients, which are our vitamins and minerals, right? They're just not. Also, modern diet thinks that we can just take a pill and a pill will solve everything, right? That's never getting to the root cause of an issue. We're just literally masking so many things, along with all these fad diets. Like, to the day we die, we're going to hear probably, 1,000 more fad diets, and they're all going to be somewhat disproven, but you'll maybe perhaps hop on the train of one just to see if it works. Hopefully not after this course, because you'll learn how to like regulate your own system, and you'll be in a happy place with your body and your body composition and whatnot. But modern diet is a huge flow blocker. And just this is a reminder that once there's a disruption in the system, that's when we're going to start to see symptoms, right? If we have no symptoms, there's most likely no disruption in the system. But when we went through, like, there's metabolic symptoms, there's cyclical symptoms. If you're experiencing any of those systems, there is some disruption in the system. There's no doubt about it. There's a disruption in the system. So we need to try to target that and fix it from the root. How do we support our endocrine system? This is where I was saying I don't want to be condescending, but it's three pieces: diet, exercise, and lifestyle habits. I say that those are easy. I know that they're not. We make things so complicated, but it is as simple as looking at your diet, looking at your exercise patterns, habits, routine, and then also your lifestyle habits. Where are your micronutrients coming from? Are you getting enough micronutrients? If you're not getting enough micronutrients, which most of us are not because our soils are depleted, even if you're eating organic, grass-fed, regenerative farmed, all of the things, you're most likely still lacking some micronutrients, sadly, because our soils are so depleted. And our soil is where our micronutrients are found, right? Or that's how they're sourced into food. So when you hear the recommendation of like a registered dietitian even recommending a multivitamin, there is truth there. I think most multivitamins, and from my own experience and research around them, I think a lot of them are kind of missing the point. And I think it is better to kind of pick and choose where you are deficient, and you could work with a practitioner to do a blood test to kind of see where you are deficient and then just supplement with those. That might result in taking 7 pills as opposed to that one multivitamin. But I think it's very hard for that one multivitamin to hit all the marks. And if there's ever a concern about overdoing it, most micronutrients are water soluble. So if you do consume too many, you would pee them out. There's something called ADEK, ADEK, and those are your fat soluble vitamins. So A, D, E, and K. Anything that is fat soluble, you can have toxicity with, right? So you do want to be mindful of those, but most multivitamins, you'd be okay. Don't take a multivitamin with ADEK and then supplement in addition to that with ADEK. That would be my recommendation there. Exercise. Are we working out too little? Are we working out too much? Is our intensity never changing? Are we always going full throttle? These are things that we need to consider. Are we doing only cardio? Are we doing only strength training? Are we doing only mobility? Where's the variation? Where's the variety? Our endocrine system needs that variety. Our bodies need stress. They actually need stress. Exercise is a fantastic form of stress. We do run into issues when the stress from day-to-day life is way too high and we add in the stress of exercise. Sometimes our bodies won't respond because it's already too stressed. It can't change anymore because it's like literally holding on to anything it can just to survive. So just like taking into consideration your lifestyle habits with your exercise and even with your diet. Oh, hi. I love it when pets come to visit. It's the best. It's just so good. So it's all 100% a lifestyle shift. Like if you're going to go down this road of, I want to feel better, I want to live in unison with my cycle, which means your endocrine system, it's 100% a lifestyle shift. It doesn't need to happen overnight, but slowly building awareness and examining where you stand day to day, how you feel, what your diet looks like, what your exercise patterns look like, what your lifestyle habits are. All of that needs to be examined in order to make the shift. And it can be a slow shift. We want it to last forever. We know, hopefully we know this, that like drastic changes don't last. They hardly ever do. They truly hardly ever do. It needs to be like a slow shift so that it's sustainable, right? So please, please, please keep that in mind. This is a quote from Elisa, and I love it, but it's every meal, every day, you will address any issues that caused your endocrine system to become disrupted, and you will rebalance your endocrine system. Her philosophy is that it's every day, every meal. What you're putting into your body matters so much. I do not want you to become obsessed with it, but I want you to become, again, an informed consumer of, I know my body needs these macronutrients. I also know it needs these micronutrients for where I am in my cycle, for the stress load that I'm experiencing, for the workouts that I have planned, right? It's going to take time to learn those things. You're not going to know them right away. But when you have that knowledge, you give your body exactly what it needs, and not just your skin sac, right? Your skin suit, but your endocrine system. You give it exactly what it needs, and then it can function the way it's supposed to. All right, here we are, our lady parts. Let's dig in. So men have some of these as well. Obviously over here on the right, there's some in the middle, but those are mostly, female anatomy. But hypothalamus, pituitary gland, those are we'll talk about this very soon. Those are like the big dogs, okay? We have your thyroid, your liver, which is part of your elimination, kidneys, part of elimination, pancreas, large intestine, part of elimination, lymphatic system, part of elimination, adrenals, part of metabolic, ovaries, part of reproductive, fallopian, reproductive, small intestine, elimination. And then most of what's on the right would be your reproductive, so uterus, vulva, vagina, clitoris, breasts, gallbladder would be part of elimination, okay? Those are all of your lady parts. We got to learn to love them all. Love each and every single one of them, okay? Get to know them. If you don't know what it does, even after this presentation, do a little inquiry. Like, what exactly does that do? You know, it's cool to learn. And now we get sciencey. All right, here we are. So we're going to start from the top down. Okay, so we're starting up in your brain. And your hypothalamus is like literally your control center. It is an almond-sized part of your brain. It receives information from your bloodstream. It's like constantly scanning your bloodstream, just reading hormonal levels of all of your hormones. That is its role. It scans, it's like a radar, just scanning your entire body, where each and every single one of these hormone levels at. Based upon what it finds, it's going to send one of two different hormones to your pituitary gland. Your hypothalamus only communicates with your pituitary gland. It scans the entire body, and based on what it finds, it tells the pituitary gland to either, well, it sends to the pituitary gland either releasing or inhibiting hormone. Okay. The pituitary gland is chickpea size. So we got two like powerhouse things that are like so unbelievably small running the show, right? Compared to the size of your other organs, like these two are very, very small. I did not know that the hypothalamus only communicated with the pituitary. I found that very, very interesting. So after the pituitary gland interprets the signal that the hypothalamus sent it, it then communicates with the rest of your endocrine system, right? So it's a top down. Pituitary will then communicate with the organ that it needs to in order to make sure a function is carried out. Yeah, that's a pretty phenomenal process right there. The hormones that the pituitary gland will send out is thyroid stimulating hormone. That's going to control your thyroid. Parathyroid hormone. That's going to control your parathyroid. I don't mean to be redundant, but let's just, go over these. Adrenocorticotropic hormone. That's going to go to your adrenals. Follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing will go to your ovaries. And exactly. So the pituitary is sending out this hormone to its target gland, which will then send up another cascade of hormones to promote different functions throughout the body. Those are the top down. Those are the two big dogs. Now we get to break it down into these groups. So there's, I believe, 5 groups that we're going to go over. I think it's easier to break it into a grouping of systems. But as we previously mentioned, none of these organs, none of these glands work independently. Every single piece works together. Okay. The first, well, let's go over the grouping of systems. So we have the blood sugar group. That's going to be your pancreas and liver. Your stress group, it's your HPA axis. So your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Okay. Metabolic group, you've got your thyroid and parathyroid. Elimination group, again, that's liver, large intestine, your lymphatic system, right? So you have your lymph nodes kind of all throughout your body, and your skin. And then we finally have your reproductive group, which is your hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis, or your HPO. So starting with our blood sugar group, pancreas and liver. Your pancreas, liver, and your brain, their functions are to regulate, to stabilize blood sugar. Those are your blood sugar stabilizing organs. Yes, they also have some other functions, but a big, huge role for those 3, pancreas, liver, and brain, is to help stabilize your blood sugar. Okay. Didn't know this, but your pancreas, 98% of it is an exocrine organ, which means it helps break down macros, again, carbs, proteins, and fats. Only 2% of it produces insulin and glucagon, which are such imperative, such important hormones, right? Only 2% of your pancreas is responsible for that. The rest of it helps break down your macros, okay? Pretty cool stuff. Let's kind of try to understand the functions of the pancreas and kind of like what's going on there. So for example, if you eat a refined carb, that could be, let's even take out the word refined. Let's just say like it could be a piece of fruit. It could be any carb source. Your body breaks it down into glucose. So that's like the natural breakdown process. It's already breaking it down into glucose, right? When the hypothalamus senses that there's glucose, right, the pancreas is going to react to that and produce insulin. Again, this whole signaling system. So your body breaks down that carb, produces glucose, breaks down into glucose, I should say. Your pancreas reacts to that extra glucose in your bloodstream by producing insulin. Insulin's job is to take that glucose and put it into your cells, okay? Whatever glucose doesn't go into your cells is going to be converted to glycogen. And if you're familiar with, like, we need glycogen to work out, right? That is like an energy source for our muscles. Like you need glycogen stores. If you run out of your glycogen stores, it's like you hit a wall. You feel like you just can't do anything. And that's when your glycogen stores are empty. You could ingest a quick bit of sugar to give you instant energy. But usually if our glycogen stores are completely depleted, we bonk, and that is never a good day. As a runner, you know, I've bonked, I think, twice in my life on big hikes, and it was incredible. It was just like such a phenomenal experience. Did not feel good at all, but like in reflection, it's just like so incredible that like the body needs sugar. It just simply needs sugar. So on the flip side, when blood sugar is too low, right, you feel like all shaky, you dropped, your pancreas is going to now produce glucagon. And what glucagon does is signal the body to put glucose back into, or excuse me, to convert glycogen back into glucose. So you've got whatever stores you have, the pancreas tells the body to take those stores and secrete it back into like the more simple sugar of glucose, right? So you have that readily available energy. We kind of want to, I think this is obvious, but we do want to avoid both extremes. That's relying on the liver to stabilize our blood sugar, as opposed to us being empowered, educated, and knowing what foods we need to eat to keep our blood sugar as stable as possible. Okay. And the deeper meaning of that is that if the liver is working to balance out our blood sugar all the time, it's not able to do other jobs, and it has many jobs, right? So for example, one of its job is to help excrete estrogen. If it's worried about your blood sugar balance all the time, right, and having to pull, to release glucagon, to produce more insulin, if it's doing all of that all the time, it can't really complete its function of the breakdown and removal of estrogen. So then we can end up with extra estrogen, right? And that's going to lead to issues. So we want to try to learn how to stabilize our blood sugar through food on our, like, without relying on our liver to do it for us. It will do it for us, but we want to try to take some of that load off of it so it can focus on other tasks. When we get to the stress group, that's our HPA axis. This is your body's control panel when it comes to stress response. When we are stressed, the hypothalamus sends out releasing hormone. We know that. The pituitary then secretes adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH. This tells your adrenals that sit on top of your kidneys, right? This tells your adrenals to release a cascade of stress-related hormones, some of which would be cortisol and adrenaline. Adrenaline increases your blood pressure and your heart rate. Cortisol, interesting, pumps out glucose. So it's fueling your muscles so that you can, this is your flight or flight response, right? So all of a sudden you get this major cortisol release. If you ever get like spooked, do you feel how you get like a cool sweat and you definitely feel your heart rate? That is exactly like that was done by your HPA axis. Your stress response to that is immediately, let's go into fight or flight. What do I need to do to survive, right? Heart rate goes up, you get that cool sweat, and you also get a massive dumping of glucose so that you can do whatever you need to do in that moment, right? This is why chronic stress is an issue, because if we're constantly in fight or flight, we constantly have adrenaline running through, we constantly have cortisol being pumped through. We don't want that. We want that in like necessary situations. That's it. When we're stressed because of work, when we're stressed because of finances, when we're stressed because of like, I don't want to say mundane life, but day-to-day life and not end of life scenarios, that's not a good thing. So this is again, lifestyle stress. We need to always be examining that. How can I reduce my load of stress, right? Where can I help regulate my nervous system? Our metabolic group is going to be your thyroid and your parathyroid. Your thyroid is right in here. And from the first slide, you would have seen it. It's like a butterfly shaped organ. Okay. And this determines your metabolic rate. If you've ever done like body mass calculations or a BMR calculation, your BMR is your basal metabolic rate. That is the amount of calories you need in order to survive without any movement, right? It's a very interesting number, but it is a baseline of the amount of calories you need to exist. You then add to it based on your daily activity level and kind of what you expect your work output will be. I didn't know this, but your thyroid is also, or your BMR, I should say, your basal metabolic rate is responsible for things beyond just calories. So it also is responsible for your heart rate, your blood pressure, your rate of breathing, your body temperature, and your speed at which your cells consume oxygen. Like that's pretty fascinating. That really is. And that's all from your thyroid. Your thyroid controls that. So imagine if you have issues with your thyroid, you're going to have issues with all of that. That's like a pretty serious thing, right? Didn't know this either. As infants, our thyroid helps determine bone growth and also the development of our brain and nervous system, right? Yeah, so pretty important stuff. Your thyroid is also very, very sensitive to everything, whether it's going on inside your body or outside your body. The cool thing about that is if we just give our thyroid some TLC, we can regulate all of these things. We can like come back into like homeostasis. Thyroid and parathyroid work very, very closely together. The parathyroid is in charge of monitoring calcium in your bones and in your bloodstream. Your parathyroid hormone is going to pump out your parathyroid will pump out parathyroid hormone. And that hormone is responsible for basically taking calcium out of your bones and putting it into your bloodstream. Why would it want to do that? Because calcium is a necessary piece of muscle contractions. We need calcium for, it's a calcium ion pump, I believe is calcium potassium ion pump. I'm like dating myself right now back to my nutrition days, but you need calcium in order for muscle and nerve contractions to happen. So when the parathyroid or the hypothalamus is scanning, it's like calcium levels are low, it's going to send out a signal for parathyroid hormone to be released so that calcium can be drawn out of the bones and put back into the blood. This can become an issue if it gets dysregulated, because then it could lead to osteoporosis, right? There's like a safety net there though, because the thyroid also produces calcitonin. And basically what that does is it'll take whatever's left over in the blood and put it back into the bones. So again, they work very closely together. Those two are communicating. It can get out of whack for sure. Again, think of all the thyroid is super sensitive. So if the thyroid is upset about some other thing, maybe it's not producing the calcitonin, right? And maybe now we just have a surplus of calcium in the blood, but none, like we're losing it from the bones, right? So again, we want to make sure that we're eating all the micronutrients that we should be getting to help keep the thyroid and the parathyroid functioning the way that they need to be. Iodine is a key nutrient that we need to look at in terms of thyroid health. This is why we have iodized salt, right? And we talked about this last week. I do not have iodized salt in my home, but sea vegetables are a great way to get iodine, okay? There's nothing wrong with iodized salt. I just use sea salt and pink Himalayan salt. But this is why iodized salt was created, was to help with thyroid issues. If we move on to the elimination group, I don't know why I'm so fascinated with this group, but I am, but it's your liver, large intestine, your lymphatic system, and your skin. None of these actually produce hormones. They don't, but they are such key players because they help with the removal of what's not needed in the body anymore in terms of so many things, but hormones specifically. So again, we have excess estrogen. The body does, like, it naturally should be pulling out that excess estrogen, and we should be eliminating it. This system is responsible for that, right? If we're not removing excess hormones, this is when we get into issues. One example would be excess estrogen does promote cancer growth, right? So we just want to be making sure that this system is working the way it should be. It is your natural detox. We'll start with the liver. So the liver breaks down hormones into smaller, more manageable bits, basically makes them more water soluble, because something needs to be water soluble to basically kind of pass through some of these systems. From the liver, these now smaller molecules move to your gallbladder and your large intestine. And this is where, like, bile is going to help with this process as well. But this is where they'll bond with fiber. This is why we need to consume fiber in our diet. So it'll bond, these molecules will latch onto fiber, or you could think of fiber like latching onto them, either way. And that helps pull it out of the system. Okay, it needs fiber to help pull out of the system. When I say pull out of the system, that would be a bowel movement. Skin and lymphatic help to reduce and remove cellular waste, okay? Along with any hormonal overloads that are happening in your system. Those are your last resort. So if the large intestine, the liver, did not fully excrete these hormones, your skin and your lymphatic system are going to try their best to do it. Okay. If you ever have a case of, like, one day it's like, really, if you have a stressful event and all of a sudden you're like, I've never smelled this bad in my life, that is an excess of hormones being excreted from your body. That is all that is. It's not that you didn't shower. It's not that you are dirty. It is literally the body's attempt to get these hormones out of your body. It's been so fascinating. So fascinating. Your skin is your largest organ, and all of your pores are what are allowing this excess cellular waste, these excess hormones to leave the body. Like, we have so many pores all over our body. And yeah, so your pores are allowing excess to leave through sweat, and your lymphatic system is your superhighway. Your lymph node regions are where things congregate. We get swollen lymph nodes, right? When we're battling something, that is a congregation of, could be many things, but it could be white blood cells. So they're fighting right there. It could be toxins. It could be hormones, right? Things congregate at our lymph nodes. This is why dry brushing is a very accessible home practice that can help with the drainage of your lymphatic system. We do not want our lymphatic system to be sluggish. We want it to be operating as smoothly as possible. So again, just a quick reminder, dry brushing, we take a coarse brush, like a little bristle brush, and we do quick, long strokes towards the heart, all over the body, all towards the heart, right? Best to do it really anytime, but especially around ovulation. Okay, and the last group is your reproductive group, your HPO axis. There's constantly communication going on between, again, hypothalamus is scanning all the time, but between the pituitary gland and your ovaries, your fallopian tubes, between this whole reproductive group. Hypothalamus is always looking for all hormonal levels, but especially estrogen and progesterone for us females, right? Based on what it finds, it's going to tell your pituitary gland to release either follicle stimulating hormone or luteinizing. Those signal basically the starts of your cycle, right? So that's super, super important. These hormones also impact how you feel, not only in your body, but also emotionally, right? We know that, like, there's this neurochemistry that shifts as we go through our 28-day cycle. So again, if these hormones are not being released at the right time based on hormonal levels, that's going to throw things off a bit. Oh, and look at that. Apparently we wrapped that up. That was speedy. Maybe I was talking too fast. Who knows? It's okay. Anyways, so homework. I want you to, again, become an observer of what's going on with your body hormonally. I want you to become an observer of your hormonal health. Trace any symptoms that you have back to one of the 5 endocrine groups. Okay. Start to notice how your endocrine system is performing and where it needs a little maintenance. What's one thing that you learned about your endocrine system that you didn't know before? I mean, I learned like 30 things just in my research for this presentation. Always learning, right? I know nothing, always learning. And then finally asking yourself, like, which area do you think you need to focus on first in regards to your endocrine system? Yeah. Trying to think of what else I want to say about this doozy of a chapter. It can be overwhelming. You'll have access to this presentation, so you can kind of go through and review. Yeah, but when one system is off, you're most likely going to feel that another system is off too. So don't try to tackle them all at once. Start with what you think needs a little bit more TLC. You could do top-down approach, right? There's something going on with it'd be hard to know if something's going on with your hypothalamus or your pituitary gland, but that next system is going to be, let's go back. So we'll go back to the list of the systems, which is, I didn't even do a list of the systems. Well, we need to adjust that. But anyways, okay, so if we go here, we've got the top down hypothalamus and pituitary. The next one is going to be your blood sugar group, so pancreas and liver, right? Are you having trouble regulating your blood sugar? Are you getting shaky? Are you getting hangry? Asking yourself those kinds of questions to pinpoint which system needs attention first. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I'll let you guys ask any questions that you do have, and we'll go from there. For those watching at home, please reach out with any questions that you do have. And we will meet next week. Next week, we discuss week 5. Let's see, week 5 is all about blood sugar stabilization. Come to the table with questions that you have about blood sugar stabilization. This is a nitty-gritty one because it's oftentimes like you're pairing a food. How are you pairing your meals? Like what is your meal made up of? Macronutrient wise. And how is that impacting you performance wise? Are you eating to fuel? Are you eating to numb out? Are you eating for pleasure? Like, you know, none of those are wrong. Like we all do it. So just like starting to identify that over the next couple of days before next week's call. Okay, let's end this recording and